Hi guys, how are you all doing? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to another all-time favorites video. I recently hit a milestone. I read now officially 500, a little bit more than 500 books, and I wanted to show you guys my favorite stories, my favorite books. And we have everything on this list. We have fantasy, we have fiction, contemporary fiction, historical fiction, we have classics, we have sci-fi books, we have everything. So now without any further ado, let's just get to the books. And the very first book that we are starting with is quite possibly my favorite book of all times. And that is The Wanderer by Peter von den Ende. And this book is so special to me, not only because of the story and because of the message, though we're going to talk about that in just a second, but also because this is a silent book, meaning that it's a picture book. The story is narrated exclusively through images. And because of that, the reading experience is very unique because this book relies on you and your unique story, your unique life experiences to craft the story itself. And because of that, there are no two books out there that are the same. And this is so special to me. I never read a book like this. I never had a reading experience like this. And all I'm gonna tell you about the story, again, because it all depends on you and how you interpret the images, but the entire story starts with a creation of this little paper boat that you can see on the cover, and the creators of this paper boat just sets it out on the ocean. That's how the story starts. And let me tell you that when I finish this book every time, and I cannot even tell you at this stage how many times I've reread this book, every time I turn the last page, I want to bawl my eyes out. That's how much I adore this book. And every time when I feel low, because this book is also one of my comfort reads, and I pick up this book, it just gives me so much hope for the future. I kind of like tearing up right now, which we're not gonna do that. I have like so many books on this list that are going to make me tear up a little bit, but we're not gonna cry in today's video, okay? No. So let's just move on to the second book that I want to show you in today's video, and that is a historical fiction book, a Hungarian historical fiction book, because this is Abigail by Magda Szabó, Magda, depending on where you're from. And Magda Szabó is probably, I want to say that she is the most known, internationally most known Hungarian novelist, and many of her works, not everything, but many of her books, novels, have been translated to English. And if you can read or get your hands on any of her translated work, I think that you should, because she is absolutely fantastic. And my favorite story from her is definitely Abigail. And this copy that I have, this is this is so old. I think it's from the 60s or from the 70s, because this is from the 70s, 1970, and this is the first edition of Abigail. This is a family copy, but because nobody reads in my family, this book is now with me, and I am not giving it back, okay? It will stay with me like forever. And this book is about Georgina, or Gina, who is a teenager, and she is the only daughter of the general of the Hungarian army, and he is also a widower. And Gina's life turns upside down when her father decides to send her to Eastern Hungary from Budapest to a very religious and a very strict boarding school. It is kind of like a prison. And Gina is struggling. She cannot really find her way with the other students, and she also rebels against the teachers, and she tries to run away. She is in general having a very hard time at this boarding school. And there is a legend in the school that there is this statue named Abigail in the backyard. And every time when you're having a hard time, when you cannot find yourself and your way, you just gotta leave a message to Abigail, and Abigail will help you. And that's basically how our story begins. I don't really want to say anything else about this book, because everything else you have to discover for yourself. But one thing that I want to say, because I think that it is important, is that this is a historical fiction book and everything takes place during the time of World War II. And that's important to know, because I feel like sometimes that based on the description, this book can come across maybe as fantasy or a book with magical realism. And also I've heard some people talking about this book as dark academia, and I personally, like, I wouldn't say that it belongs to those genres. This is a historical fiction book, and I just want you to know that going into reading this, if you decide to pick this book up, you are not going to regret it. I feel like that if you like historical fiction as a genre, this is a must read. And once you read this book by Magda Szabó, I can guarantee you that you will want to pick up every single other work that she published and translated. And the next book on my list that I want to talk about is also kind of like a historical fiction, but maybe I would describe this book as a mystery with sci-fi elements and Buddhist teachings. Probably that's like a much better description, and that is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Zeki. Oh my god, you guys, this book is so fantastic, and it was also such a unique reading experience for me. Ruth Zeki, she is an American-Japanese writer, and she is also a Zen priestess. And let me tell you that all of these elements, every single one of them come into play when it comes to this book. In present-day Vancouver Island, Canada, Ruth, who is an American-Japanese novelist in the book, she is having a hard time because she's suffering from writer's block, but she wants to write the memoirs of her mother, who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And then she's just walking on the beach one day, because again, she's in a writer's block and she doesn't know what to do, when she tumbles upon this Hello Kitty lunchbox. And when she opens the lunchbox, it is full with letters written by a Japanese teenager who lives in Japan. Now, if this plot summary doesn't make you want to read this book, the freaking masterpiece, then I really don't know what will. To me, this book was not necessarily about the plot, but again, I have no complaints when it comes to the plot and when it comes to the characters. Ruth Zeki did a fantastic job there. But to me, this book was about the reading experience, because just like I said, Ruth Zeki is a Zen priestess. And one of the biggest teachings of Buddhism, as far as I know, that one thing that all humans should aspire for is to live in the present, because we spend way too much time thinking about things that happened in the past. And we also spend way too much time thinking about future events that will probably happen to us. And we all forget just to live in the present, to live in the now, the power of now. And that is what basically this book forces you to do, because, and this is again such a weird experience, and I am having such a hard time putting this into words, but reading this book, it forced me to be in the present. And sometimes this book forces you to slow down and to think. And one of the name of the main characters, this 16-year-old Japanese girl whose diary we find in this book, her name is Nao Yasutani. And Nao, although it is spelled as N-A-O in this book and in English, it sounds like now. That's the name of the character. Now, there is a lot of trigger warnings when it comes to this book: suicide, suicidal thoughts, World War II, bullying, the 2011 Japanese tsunami. Like, we are touching on a lot of sensitive topics. If you have not read this book yet, please pick it up. It will blow your mind. One of the best reading experiences that I ever had in my life. And the next two books that I am showing you guys, they are so fantastic. I didn't want to include two books on this list from the same author, but I just cannot help it. These books, both of these books are freaking amazing, and I am just going to show you guys both at the same time. The Islands of Missing Trees by Alif Shafak, and also There Are Rivers in the Sky by Alif Shafak. These are both like historical fiction, though when it comes to Alif Shafak, she writes multiple timelines, and usually there is a contemporary timeline, and also there is at least one or two different historical timelines, and that's how it is in both of these books. This is a book that I read this year, and I included it in one of my vlogs. I bawled my eyes out, but in general, Alif Shafak has that effect on me, and I don't even know which book to recommend to you guys, because this is my first from her, and this is my last from her, and you need to read both. Her stories are always about belonging and identity. And in this particular book, we are following the entire story from the point of view of a fig tree. The events are taking place in Cyprus as well as in modern day in Britain. And then in this book, everything at the end will come together from the point of view of one single drop of water. It's just crazy. But the storylines are taking place, well, we start out in ancient Mesopotamia, and then also we go to Victorian London, and also modern day in Britain, like 2014, 2018. Both of these books are so beautiful. They are so emotional, and they are so human. I do not think that there are any other authors, well, maybe just one more author that is coming up on this list, who understands the human condition more than Alif Shafak does. I'm just like blown away every single time when I read something from her. I have not read her entire backlist. I am working through her books as slowly as I can, because she always knocks it out of the park. Whatever book you pick up from her, you're not going to regret it. I highly recommend this too, but honestly, at this stage, I can't recommend anything by this author. Even if I haven't read it, probably I would still recommend it. And as long as we're talking about authors and the human condition, let me just mention my next all-time favorite book, and that is Anxious People by Frederick Beckman. Because this book gave me my faith in humanity back. Every time I talk about this book, this is what I say all the time. It was one of the best reading experiences in my life, because again, I feel like nobody can really understand human emotions and human connection quite like Frederick Beckman. Maybe Alif Shafak, but Frederick Beckman, he blew my mind. This book is not necessarily about the plot, though I personally felt by the end of the book that the plot was hilarious, because it's all about a hostage situation. An open house becomes a hostage situation after a failed robbery, and then a group of people are basically trapped together in this house, and I adored every single one of these characters. And through the characters, this book is basically just a lesson. You know, we all need to recognize that every single one of us is a very complex story, and there is more inside. It's not just all about the superficial, it's not just all about the outside. So have some patience with the people in your life. Oh, this book made me so damn emotional, and when I finished the story, I cried, and I was like, thank you, Frederick Beckman, for again giving my faith back in humanity. And now let's just take a very quick break from humans and from emotions, and let's just discuss my all-time favorite fantasy book, and that is Warbreaker by Sanderson. This is the book basically that showed me what adult fantasy is, because nobody comes up with magic system and nobody builds worlds like Sanderson does. It is now an expectation. I expect every single adult fantasy writer to write like this. And I know that this book is insanely famous, insanely popular, so maybe you have heard of the magic system and the characters, but just for those of you who had not and maybe are considering to pick up this book takes place in a world where the magic is based on colors and breath, and it is called biochromatic breath. It still blows my mind. And we are basically following, well, we are following many characters, but the two main characters in this book are two sisters, Ciri and Vivenna, and we are following them throughout the story, and we are witnessing their personal growth throughout the story. Now, this is, just like I said, adult fantasy. I'm somebody who doesn't always need romance in her fantasy, but this one had a little bit. It had a little bit of romantic subplot, and I genuinely enjoyed it. I loved it. For now, this is a standalone, but I know that a sequel is coming, and I cannot wait. I think I know exactly which one of the characters we're going to follow in that book. Now, next, let me just mention a couple of classics, you guys. And first, I want to talk about The Razor's Edge by W. Somerset Maugham. This book blew me away. Well, obviously, that is why this book is on this list, Zsuzsi. You guys know that I am a character-driven reader, and I appreciate books that are deeply reflective and philosophical. And this is exactly what this book is, and it centers around the themes of self-discovery, self-growth, spirituality, and the meaning of life. So, of course, I am on board for this book. Now, this is a book that's set in the aftermath of World War I, and we are following a very young guy, Larry, who was very deeply affected by the events of World War I, and after the war, he decides to take on a different path instead of following the conventional path that everybody expects from him. Instead of pursuing wealth and marriage and love and whatnot, he decides to go on a spiritual journey and to travel. And this story is actually narrated by Maugham himself, because he is a secondary character in this book who is the observer, and every now and then he has a conversation with Larry, and Larry tells us what it is exactly that he learned throughout his travels. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but I dog-eared this book so many times, and this book has so many quotes that are just so meaningful to me. I absolutely adore this book, and if you have not picked up this book by him, then please do so. You are not going to regret it. And the two other classics that are on this list, and again, you guys, I cannot even tell you which one of these I adore more. Not that I have to choose between these two ladies and between these two stories. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Like, are you kidding me? Of course they are on my top 15 list. And certainly, I do not have to describe the plot of these books to you guys, but I do want to tell you why I freaking adore them. Do I really? Do I really need to tell you why I adore Jane Austen? I'm pretty sure that I adore you for the exact same reason why you adore Jane Austen. This book is not only about Mr. Darcy and the romance and the romantic tension. Of course, I enjoyed it, but it was more so about the personal growth, the personal journey of Elizabeth, who is full of prejudice. And also, I really enjoyed the commentary, though that's the same for every single Jane Austen because I really enjoy her commentary on the class system and on the role of women in society. A freaking masterpiece. To me, probably Pride and Prejudice will be my always and forever. I don't think that any of her other books tops this one, and maybe this is something that makes me a very basic reader, but Pride and Prejudice is the one and only. If you like any other of her books more than Pride and Prejudice, please let me know in the comments below, and also tell me why, because I don't get it. I don't get it. And Wuthering Heights, you guys, I am obsessed with this book. The setting in this book, the dark themes, and the discussion about the boundaries between passion and love and morality just really blew me away. And I have no idea how this story just popped out of Emily Bronte's head, but like, probably that is why she is one of the best author of all times, and I am not. And as long as we're talking about that, the best writers of all times, I just wish I had the power somehow to sit down both of these ladies and many other female authors and tell them how much they did for generations of readers, especially young girls, and for literature in general, because these ladies died, you know, thinking that they didn't really contribute much to literature and to writing, because the critics were very, very harsh on their works. at a time, and I just want to sit them down and tell them that the critics were wrong. They just didn't understand you. They just didn't get you. You have absolutely no idea how much you did for literature, and even after like hundreds of years, we are still reading your books and we adore them. Next, let me just show you the last fiction book on this list, because everything else is sci-fi and fantasy. And this book is The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brammer. And I cannot even tell you how much this book means to me, because I don't think that I own any other book out of these 500 books that I've read that sees me more than this book. Now, this is not a happy book. I mean, ultimately the ending is happy, but in general this is not a happy book, and I know that the cover can be a little bit misleading because of the flowers. It looks like kind of like a happy, fluffy, sunshiny read. It is not. It is about Clover, who is a death doula. And if you don't know what a death doula is, because I had no idea what a death doula was before reading this book, but she basically helps people to transition in their lives when the loved ones, for whatever reason, they cannot or they don't want to be with those people. And Clover is living a very withdrawn life up until she meets one of her patients, Claudia, who is an ex-journalist, and she has terminal cancer, and then everything about Clover's life changes. I freaking adore this book. This book, despite this book having such heavy themes and discussions about death and the meaning of life and the choices that we make in our lives, I was just so happy reading this book. And ultimately the ending of this book is happy, and you will be very satisfied with how Clover's journey ends. But it was so emotional and so human, and I cried my eyes out when I finished reading this book. If you ever felt like in your life like an outsider, like an introvert, like somebody who doesn't belong, if you're somebody who constantly questions, oh my god, is this the right decision for me, is this the right path for me, if you're somebody who ever dealt with loneliness and depression, you gotta pick this book up, because this book will see you like no other books out there. Well, no other books that I've ever read. Next, I really want to talk to you guys about my favorite sci-fi book of all times, and that is this little novella, To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers writes the kind of sci-fi that blows my mind, and it was actually really hard for me to decide which one of her books to put on this list, but I decided to go with this one, mostly because of the cover and mostly because this is a standalone, because the other books that I read by her, those are all series, and you definitely gotta pick up every single one of her books. But if you want to sample what I'm talking about, then I think that this is the perfect book to start with, because Becky Chambers sci-fis, they are very character driven. They are not super sciencey. Like sometimes, you know, in these big epic sci-fi books, sometimes the science can go over my head because I'm like, what you're talking about? But not with Becky Chambers, because it's all about characters, and specifically about personal growth and about relationships and found family. And that is just something that is so important to me. So if it is in a book, I will read it and I will love it. I was sucked into this story after reading the first sentence, and I read the entire thing basically in one sitting, because the first sentence is, if you read nothing else we've sent home, please at least read this. Imagine a future where humans, instead of terraforming planets to fit the human bodies and the human life, we are transforming ourselves, our bodies, through temporary genetic modifications to be able to live on that particular planet. We are following 4 scientists in this book, and one of them is Ariadne, who are going from planet to planet as observers. They don't change anything on the planet. They are just observers, scientists, observers, and they are sending the findings back home to Earth. But this is something that takes hundreds of years, and they are in deep sleep between travel. And then one day they realize that there are certain things that changed back home on Earth. The society changed dramatically, and some of their home countries do not even exist anymore, and Earth no longer wants to fund their discoveries. They just don't care anymore. And I just want to be super clear about something, because I don't want to be misleading in this video. But just like I said, this is a character-driven sci-fi. There is not much adventure and tension in this book, because we are just following scientists who are observing these planets, and they are just doing their day-to-day, everyday work. And while they are doing that, we get a lot of different musings about humans. Who are humans? Who are we in space? How should we study extraterrestrial life? What are our ethical and moral obligations when it comes to space science and space discovery? And now, you guys, let me show you the 2 fantasy romances that I absolutely adore, and I cannot even imagine my life and my reading journey without these 2 books. And one of them is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, and the other one is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This is the first fantasy romance that I ever read in my life, and this is the best fantasy romance that I ever read in my life. Which one should I talk about more? Let's just start with Sword Heart, because I think that Sword Heart has one of my personal favorite female characters that I've ever read about, and that is Hala. And Hala is a widower and a caretaker of her great uncle, who collects all these kind of like magical artifacts, and after his death he leaves everything to Hala. And then Hala gets into a little bit of trouble with her family, wants to get her to get married because they want to put their filthy little paws on her money, and Hala is like, hell no, I am already a widower, this is not happening again. And she decides to delete herself with a magical sword. But then it turns out that that magical sword is actually our male character, Sarkis, who is the best male fantasy romance character that I've ever read about in my life. And they together have to go on a little bit of a journey, a little bit of an adventure to save Hala from marriage and to also save her inheritance. And there is absolutely nothing that I can criticize about this book. I love the characters, and I particularly like how T. Kingfisher writes female characters, because in her books the female characters are a little bit older, you know, they are in their 30s, some of them are widowers, and they are more on the plumper side, and they are definitely not warriors, okay, like in all other different fantasy romances. And I also really like the male character and the banter between the 2 characters. Oh my god, I think that this is the best banter that I've ever read about in my life. I loved the slow burn romance, I loved the pining, I loved the world, I loved that little feminist twist, T. Kingfisher style feminist twist that the author puts on everything. Is just like, in my humble opinion, this book is just perfect in every possible way. And if you like fantasy romance but you have not read this book, please pick it up. Personally, don't think that you will regret it. And I can basically say the exact same thing about Daughter of No Worlds. I do not understand why these books are not more popular, because they should be. I know that more people know about Daughter of No Worlds because this is more like on the romantasy side of things, but this book is not really. This is just fantasy romance. This book is also so perfect. The female main character, the male main character, the world building, the secondary characters, the magic system, the story itself, and how everything ends, the commentary. Oh my god, everything is just freaking perfect in this book. I think why I love this book so much is because of the connection that the characters have, and it's not just about the primary characters but also about the secondary characters, because the connection and the relationships feel so authentic to me. And the plot is very fast-paced. This is a very long series. It's not just about the first book, but also the other two books. They are very long, but you don't feel that because the plot is just so fast-paced. And let me tell you that if I ever have a puppy, I will name him Maxentarius. And last but not least, you guys, I want to finish off this video with Cersei by Madeline Miller, which is still one of the best, if not the best, Greek mythology retelling that I've ever read in my life. Though, I gotta be honest, I kind of feel like that Madeline Miller only competes with herself, because all the other Greek myth retellings that I absolutely adored and I was obsessed with, those were all written by Madeline Miller. I'm somebody who adores these feminist style Greek myth retellings because I love how they give agency to the characters in Greek mythology who were given no agency or the wrong agency, like for example in case of Cersei, and then we get to know a little bit more about her and about her motivations. Now, Cersei is a goddess. We know her as the witch in Greek mythology, but she is a goddess. She was born a goddess because she is the daughter of the Titan Helios. But she is very mundane, and because of that, all the other gods and goddesses, they kind of like don't consider her a true goddess. And later on in life, she discovers that she possesses the power of witchcraft, and then she does something very silly for a man because she is in love with that man, and then everybody becomes very afraid of her, specifically afraid of her power. And because of that, her father takes her to a deserted island. There is nobody else there but her, and she is supposed to live there all on her own, kind of like it's a prison, but she does not feel that it is a prison. She becomes one with nature. She discovers her power. She learns more about witchcraft, and she becomes an incredibly powerful female character in Greek mythology. Now, this novel is specifically about the exploration of the voice of Cersei and in general women in Greek mythology, and also in real life. And Cersei is just like any other woman out there who has been living her life and trying to survive and trying to be successful in a world that is made for men. But this book also explores a lot of different other themes, like for example vengeance and forgiveness and loneliness and looking for love in a loveless life and finding yourself and finding your path in life. It blew my mind. This book blew my mind. I know that Madeline Miller and this book specifically is insanely popular, insanely hyped, and it is worth the hype. If you have not picked up this book yet, please do so. You're not going to regret it. And also, easily, this is one of the most beautiful books that I own. Just look at that cover. I mean, I want to display it. I cannot because I don't have space, but I want to display this book so bad. And that is it, guys. These are my top 15 all-time favorite books out of all the 500 books that I've read throughout my life. If you've read any of these books, please definitely let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you want to give me a couple of book recommendations based on these books that I absolutely adored, please do so. Now hit share, like, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I have a lot of fun bookish videos coming up for the summer and for the rest of the spring. And in the meantime, if you want to check out any of my other videos, I will leave them on the screen, probably here and here. And I'll see you soon in an upcoming video. Bye!